She's Carly. She's Sam. Sam I am.
To her millions of fans, she was known as the funny BFF. But she says behind that bubbly on-screen persona, nothing about her real life was funny.
Nearly every tween in America knew the name Jennette McCurdy.
Behind all the fame and glamour, McCurdy says, was a darker reality. Now, 30 years old, she's opening up about it in a new memoir called I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Social media divided over the title. Why so direct?
You know, this title is, I get that it's attention grabbing, but it's also something that I mean sincerely.
What were the pitfalls of child fame?
You're playing an adult's game. You're in an adult's world, and you don't recognize that. You're incapable of being on that level, but you are confused and you think that you are.
You pull back the curtain on child stardom. It is not a pretty picture.
Not as I see it, no.
When I was growing up in the early through mid-90s, the channel Nickelodeon was a huge source of comfort to me through all of my trials and tribulations of childhood trauma. And it wasn't until I watched the recent documentary The Orange Years on Hulu that I really could put into words why that was. According to that documentary, Nickelodeon was created as this channel that was meant to produce media for kids. And when they say for kids, they didn't just mean for kids with an educational and wholesome tone meant to instill moral values in our children. While that is important, Nickelodeon wanted to focus on what was fun about being a kid, what we enjoyed about being gross, what kids enjoyed about being weird. And it also wanted to show a variety of kids from different backgrounds, not just kids from stable middle-class two-parent households with white picket fences, but kids who felt like outcasts, whether due to family circumstances or socioeconomic background, or just due to the fact that we're all a little bit weird. And because of that, Nickelodeon was always a channel that I felt could be there for me. Of course, that documentary, The Orange Years, has now received a lot of criticism for being biased, and it's pretty clear why. The producer of many of these Nickelodeon shows, including some of their classics like All That, Kenan and Kel, Drake and Josh, some of the biggest shows that were featured in that documentary were all produced by the same man. And that man was kept out of that documentary for a very specific reason. So the documentary came across as very pro-Nickelodeon, almost like an advertisement or an infomercial, rather than a documentary that really dug deeper and looked at the full story. While I had criticism, I did like being able to put into words what it was about that channel that connected me so much. At the same time, I did often have a problem when I was a younger child, and that's that the characters I often related to were the villains. Take Rugrats, for example, one of my absolute favorite shows to watch on Nickelodeon. In fact, when I was recovering from surgery a couple months ago, every night after I got out of the bathtub, after washing and bandaging my wounds, I would take an edible and lie on the couch and watch Rugrats all night until I fell asleep. It was glorious. That show holds up. Side note, Nickelodeon is the best channel to play the game Kids Show or Stoner Show with. You pick a show at random and ask, is it a kids show or a stoner show? Like Ren and Stimpy, stoner show. Cat Dog, kids show that holds up for stoners. Rugrats seasons 1 to 3, stoner show. Seasons 4 and up, kids show. You can do the same thing with the movie Good Burger. Is Good Burger the Wayne's World or Blues Brothers of our time? Is it a stoner movie or is it a kids movie? Both. What are your favorite shows to play kids show or stoner show with? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, when watching Rugrats, I found that I often related to a character like Angelica. Similar with Hey Arnold, another one of my favorite shows, I often related to a character like Helga. And it didn't really make sense to me as to why, because I wasn't mean. I wasn't a bully. I wasn't out there trying to intentionally make other people's lives miserable. But in reflecting on this as an adult, I realized that I noticed a trend in a lot of these early shows. That if you have a female character who comes from a background dealing with trauma, who has emotional and mental health issues related to her circumstances, and also has a personality of being aggressive, being loud, being an in-your-face kind of character while also being a little girl and kind of bucking those stereotypes of being sweet and quiet. When you add all of that together, for some reason, those characters were always cast in the bully role. We never really got to see a character who was a little girl who grew up with some difficult circumstances and also had that loud and obnoxious personality, but didn't use that combination of things for the sake of bullying other people. We didn't have a girl who could be in the protagonist role of that type of situation. That is, until the show iCarly came out. The stars of the show iCarly are about the same age as I am now, and while the actors played characters slightly younger than them and it was probably geared at an audience a couple years younger than me, I really connected with iCarly, mainly because of the character Sam. Sam on iCarly is exactly what I had been looking for this whole time. A girl who was aggressive and loud and in your face. She was direct with you. She had that in-your-face persona, and she was one of the protagonists. It was what I had been looking for all along, and as a result, I really connected with this character Sam. She became one of my style inspirations. I loved her outfits. I always rooted for her in every episode and wanted her to find success and happiness because, in my opinion, she deserved it. All of us loud and aggressive girls finally deserved this ability to be the hero for once. So imagine my disappointment when I learned that the actress who played Sam on iCarly, Jennette McCurdy, had a terrible time the entire time that she was on that set. And some of those terrible times came from that very producer who wasn't mentioned in the Orange Years documentary. The same guy who produced Drake and Josh and The Amanda Show and Keenan and Kel also produced iCarly and made this girl's life miserable. Well, that was just heartbreaking to hear. So when Jennette McCurdy decided to write her own book about her experiences as a child actress, leading into her decisions to ultimately quit acting, I could not wait to get my hands on this book. And now I cannot wait to review it for you guys today. Yes, the title is quite provocative and we're gonna talk about it, but I've gotta say, there is so much to unpack in this book and I am so glad that this book exists. Today we are going to be doing a review of Jennette McCurdy's new memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago. You guys asked for it.
What's up, my fellow small business supporters? I'm Savvy, and welcome back to Savvy Writes Books, the channel where we talk about books and business, where today I have a book review for you guys. If you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe. Every Friday at 11 a.m. Central, and often other times throughout the week, we do some bonus videos, but I always on Friday have a new video for you guys about books and business, so don't forget to click the subscribe button. We're getting real close to 40,000, and I'm really excited about that. And in addition, give a like, give a dislike if you don't like the video, leave me some engagement because I love getting to engage with you guys and get feedback on this work. Thank you so much. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to all of my Patreon supporters whose names are up on the screen, and Patreon supporters who give $5 a month and up are linked in the description below, where they can choose to link their own site of whatever type that they like. And in addition to that, before we get too deep into the topic, I also have to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Magic Spoon, which is the high protein cereal I've been eating for breakfast almost every day for more than 6 months now. A lot of you have probably been following my workout journey during the past year, and one of the things I've talked a lot about is how I've needed to add more protein throughout my day. Before I started eating this cereal, I honestly didn't have much of a good habit for eating breakfast daily, let alone a high protein breakfast. I'll be honest, I just didn't have the time or motivation to cook eggs and clean a pan. I needed something easier. Now I look forward to pouring a bowl of the cinnamon flavor in the morning to get some protein at the start of my day. A serving of Magic Spoon cereal has about 140 calories, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only about 4 to 5 net grams of carbs in each serving. They have 0 grams of sugar per serving, with the exception of the honey nut flavor, which has 1 gram of sugar per serving because it uses real honey to make it. I also love that Magic Spoon is now making cereal bars as well. I like to use them as a snack in the morning when I'm walking Chewy or taking my walk over to the gym. Magic Spoon cereal bars have 1 gram of sugar, 10 grams of protein, 4 net grams of carbs, and only 130 calories per bar. They're also keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and low-carb. So click the link below to get some Magic Spoon cereal today. You can build your very own variety box and use my code SAVVY for $5 off. You can choose from the best-selling flavors like cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, cookies and cream, and maple waffle, plus other awesome flavors including honey nut, blueberry muffin, and cinnamon roll, my favorite. You can also add the cookies and cream and cocoa peanut butter flavor cereal bars to your variety box as well. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee, so if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund you your money, no questions asked. Magic Spoon is now also shipping to Canada and the UK, as well as within the US. So click the link below and use the code SAVVY for $5 off, or go to magicspoon.com/savvy to save $5 on your order today. Thank you again to Magic Spoon for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's get into this book. So first, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the book's title. I've seen a lot of criticism on Twitter from people saying that the book's title was insensitive or that the book's title was triggering in some way. I've got to say, I think the book is titled perfectly. And as we go through the book and discuss the way that it's written and the way that Janette has kind of mastered the art of the setup and the payoff, the title is absolutely earned and the title absolutely pays off based on the content of the book. But I do want to say that for people who think that the title was upsetting to them because, oh my god, how could someone be glad their mom died? Or I've even had people mention to me that maybe they had to deal with the death of their own mother recently and they were still grieving, so seeing this kind of title was a big shock to them. And I can understand that. I definitely understand where people are coming from. But guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. Before I was halfway through this book, I was cheering for the mom to die too. I'm also glad her mom died. I'm not going to beat around the bush. In some cases, it doesn't matter if someone is your mom or your dad or someone close to you in your family, even if someone is blood related to you, even if someone raised you. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're entitled to your love if they use that connection with you to abuse and exploit you. And that is a lot of what it becomes very clear that was happening in this situation. So let's have a quick content warning before we dive into the content of this book, because there is a lot here and I don't want anyone to be caught off guard. This video is going to include discussions of some of the main topics in this book, which include a lot of abuse between a parent and a child. Some of that abuse involves SA. It involves that type of physical abuse. It also involves a lot of emotional abuse. We're going to be talking about EDs. I'm saying these things so I don't get demonetized. EDs in this context refers to when you have an unhealthy relationship with food. It doesn't refer to when your dick doesn't work. Use your context clues. So there's going to be lots of talk of that. There's also going to be talk of adult men being creepy with underage girls and things like that. There's a lot of stuff in this book. It is a very heavy read. However, what I will say is that Jennette McCurdy has a fantastic writing voice that really does bring humor and lightness into certain situations, that really balances the tone out in this book and makes the reader really invested. It feels very well-rounded and complete. There are also going to be a few times where I might draw a few comparisons to Jamie Lynn Spears' memoir, which I reviewed on this channel a couple months back. And part of me feels kind of bad about doing that because one of the things that Janette mentions a lot in this book is that she didn't really like being compared to other Nickelodeon stars, and that was often used as fuel for the creator of all of these shows to manipulate them into doing what he wanted, which is pretty terrifying. So if I ever do draw a comparison, it's not meant to compare the two women or the two actresses whatsoever. It's more so meant to compare the writing, because I did have a lot of issues with Jamie Lynn's book, mainly within the writing of it itself. I mean, also in the way she villainized Britney, but I'm just a bitter Britney stan according to the comments. I did have a lot of issues with her writing itself, the way that it felt very lazy. It didn't feel like it fleshed a lot of things out, and there are some places that I think we can draw some comparisons to the way that Janette talked about those things instead, as an exercise in comparing and contrasting for learning how to do some better writing. So if I do compare those things, it's solely based on the writing itself, not based on comparing the two women whatsoever. I think a lot of people went into this book expecting a tell-all expose of her time at Nickelodeon, and there is some of that in here. However, this book is so much more than that. It is a detailed examination of what it's like to deal with mental illness, of what it's like to deal with abuse while you're in the situation versus what it's like to reflect on it afterward. It talks about relationships with religion and Janette's deconstruction from the Mormon religion and things like that. There's so much to this book, which is why it's long, and I'm glad that it's long because it deserved to be fleshed out. So let's crack it open and let's talk about some of the parts in this book that I think are really important to point out. By the way, I gave this book 5 stars. I think it's incredible. I know oftentimes people want to see negative book reviews from me or see me dunking on a book. I liked this one. I thought it was fantastic. You're getting a positive book review from me today. Hope I don't disappoint anyone with that. One of the things that a lot of authors mention they struggle a lot with when writing a book is getting that first line perfect. It can feel like a lot of pressure to make sure that the first line of what you write is going to set the tone for the book, bring everyone in, grab the reader's attention, and I think that this book did a good job with the opening line. So let's start here, just at the beginning of the prologue, where she says, It's strange how we always give big news to loved ones in a coma, as if a coma is just a thing that happens from a lack of something to be excited about in your life. I thought this was a fantastic opening sentence, first of all, because it kind of sets the scene. We know, okay, we're probably about to enter a hospital room. And in addition to that, it sets like a strange sense of dark humor that's going to be underlying the entire writing of the entire book. So I thought that was good. We get the initial tone of like, you know, as if a coma is something that happens because you have a lack of something to be excited about. We get the idea that from the start, okay, there's going to be some dark humor to this. That's where we're going. In a lot of reviews of memoir and of books in general, I've talked about the importance of using scene and summary in a balanced way. And by that, I mean, you know, when we have a summary of something, we have an overview of a sequence of events. We may have a brief montage. We're not going to delve into the feeling of each scene. We're not going to delve into the details of the five senses. We're not going to delve into the dialogue of everything. And a lot of times in specifically celebrity memoirs, I notice that there's often too much summary and not enough scene, and that could be because, you know, a celebrity who's known for acting may not be a more experienced writer, and they may have kind of phoned it in for the book deal or something like that. And that's not to say that summary is bad, it's to say that you have to have a balance and you have to have enough scene in order to get the reader situated in that environment with you and get them emotionally connected to the story. I think that's one of this book's strengths, is that there is a ton of scene in this, and those scenes are really fully fleshed out. And from the very beginning, that was one of the first things I noted. We delve right into that after the first sentence where she says, "Mom is in the ICU at the hospital. The doctor told us she has 48 hours to live. Grandma, Grandpa, and Dad are out in the waiting room calling relatives and eating vending machine snacks. Grandma says Nutter Butters soothe her anxiety. I'm standing around Mom's tiny comatose body with my 3 older brothers, Marcus, the together one, Dustin, the smart one, and Scott, the sensitive one. I wipe the corners of her crusted shut eyes with a rag, and then it begins." So right away, we're in a scene, right? We know where everyone is. We know which characters are in the scene. We have this whole Grandma says Nutter Butters soothe her anxiety. We're getting some instant characterization of her and her brothers right from the start. Excellent opening, in my opinion. I thought the writing on this was good. What happens then is almost this weird mix of having dark humor over an incredibly objectively disturbing scenario. So while her mom is in a coma, Janette and her 3 brothers all decide to try to tell their mom something shocking to see if that'll wake her up so that she might want to share an opinion about it, right? So what Janette does is she leans into her mom and says, "Mommy, I am so skinny right now. I'm finally down to 89 pounds. And then from there, she elaborates and says, "I'm in the ICU with my dying mother, and the thing I'm sure will get her to wake up is the fact that in the days since Mom's been hospitalized, my fear and sadness have morphed into the perfect anorexia motivation cocktail, and finally, I have achieved Mom's current goal weight for me, 89 pounds. And then her mom doesn't wake up, but we get this idea from the start that, okay, Mom was putting a lot of pressure on her for something. So this prologue is only a page and a half long, but from the start we get the tone, we understand who some of the major players are, and we understand what the major conflict is going to be, which is this idea of Janette constantly trying to please her mom, who has these obnoxiously high standards for her. In the next chapter, we kind of go all the way back to the early 90s, talking about Janette's early childhood, and from there it kind of tells the story of her life chronologically. And I will say, I appreciated from the start, I thought she made a very interesting stylistic choice to write the entire book in present tense. One of the things I've talked about in my reviews of memoir is this idea of having a voice of reflection mixed in with your voice of innocence, and that is related to the phrasing comes from, I think, a William Blake poem, and then the application of it to memoir comes from this essay in the literary magazine Brevity. And I've talked about this previously in some of my other videos. Specifically, I did a big thing about it in the Jamie Lynn Spears review because Jamie Lynn did a very bad job at this. I actually think Janette did a lot better of a job in mixing these voices together, and I think one of the things that really helped with that was her decision to tell the entire story in present tense. So, for example, she's telling the story of the present in front of me is wrapped in Christmas paper, even though it's the end of June. We have so much paper left over from the holidays because Grandpa got the dozen roll set from Sam's Club, even though Mom told him a million times that it wasn't even that good of a deal. I peeled, don't rip off the paper because I know Mom likes to save a wrapping paper scrap. Immediately we're in present tense, right? She's saying the present in front of me is wrapped. It is the end of June. She's setting us into that scene. I think this was a smart choice, not only because it puts us in the scene in the moment, but also because it gives us an idea of where her mindset is at the time. A along with this writing that kind of connects it to what she's going to feel in the future but doesn't necessarily know yet. We're going to point out a few places where this happens, but it's a thing that very skilled memoir writers do. Page 4, I think, was a good example to illustrate how she used verb tense to her advantage in this writing. So she says, she's talking about her brother. She says, I love Scotty because he's nostalgic. I learned that word in the vocabulary cartoons book Mom reads to us every day. So we have a mix of present and past tense instead of going into past tense and then past perfect tense. A lot of times when people write a memoir, they'll write in past tense, and then when they're talking about something that happened in the past of the past, they'll shift into past perfect tense. So if Janette had done that instead, it would have read like, as a child, I loved Scotty because he was nostalgic. I had learned the word nostalgic in the vocabulary cartoons book. But that would make it seem a little more detached. Instead, we feel like we're in her mind as a child right now, where she's saying, I love Scotty because he's nostalgic. I learned, and then learned we see as the past tense of what she's thinking right now as a child. That's within the past of the flashback. Thought that was excellent use of verb tense. I also was really intrigued by this paragraph, and if you remember my intro to this video a couple minutes ago, you'll see why. So Janette is talking about receiving a birthday gift. When she opens the gift, she says, I'm immediately disappointed, if not horrified, when I see what I've received as my present for my 6th birthday. Sure, I like Rugrats, but this 2-piece outfit, a t-shirt and shorts, features Angelica, my least favorite character, surrounded by daisies. I hate flowers on clothes. And there are ruffles around the sleeves and leg holes. If there's one thing I could pinpoint as being directly in opposition to my soul, it's ruffles. I love it, I shout excitedly. It's my favorite gift ever. I throw on my best fake smile. Mom doesn't notice the smile is fake. She thinks I genuinely love the gift. She tells me to put the outfit on for my party when she already starts taking off my pajamas. As she's removing my clothes, it feels more like a rip than a peel. So we already have this look of her mom having a violent action towards her, along with Janette putting on this front to please her mom because she believes that that's what she's supposed to do. But it also kind of hit me because you guys remember me saying, Angelica was this character related to and didn't want to relate to. Similar to when I finally saw Sam on iCarly, who was played by Janette, I finally saw this character and I related to her and wanted to and felt good about that. So it's interesting to see how she's looking at this character Angelica and being like, no, I hate her, I don't want to be associated with her. I don't think there's any deeper meaning to that, but I mean, within the context of the book, the deeper meaning is that her mom got her a gift she didn't like, her mom doesn't even know her that well, and she's having to pretend she likes it. I also just think that the narrative voice is really good in this. As we're setting the scene at the beginning, we've got good narrative voice that really puts us in her head and into the mind of her as a child. She nailed that voice of what she would have sounded like back then with the kid logic. So it says, it's 2 hours later, I'm standing in my Angelica uniform at Eastgate Park surrounded by my friends, or rather the only other people in my life who are my age. They're all from my primary class at church. Carly Reitzel's there with her zigzag headband. Madison Thomer's there with her speech impediment that I wish I had because it's so freaking cool. That was relatable. I was always jealous of the kids who got to go to like speech therapy class because I don't know why. I think that's just the thing you feel like when you're a kid. And Trent Page is there talking about Pink, which he does excessively and exclusively, much to the dismay of the adults around him. At first I didn't realize why the adults cared so much about Trent's Pink obsession, but then I put 2 and 2 together. They think he's gay, and we're Mormon, and for some reason you can't be gay and Mormon at the same time. I thought the voice there was great. We really got her kid voice kind of mixed in with what she's reflected on as an adult. It's seamless. I think that writing's fantastic. Next, we learned that a few years ago, Janette's mom had cancer and that her mom is constantly paranoid about the cancer coming back. But not only that, she also likes to use her cancer story to her advantage whenever she can. It says, Mom loves recounting her cancer story. The chemotherapy, the radiation, the bone marrow transplant, the mastectomy, the breast implant, the stage 4-ness of it, how she was only 35 when she got it, to any churchgoer, neighbor, or fellow Albertsons customer who lends a listening ear. Mom reminisces about cancer the way most people reminisce about vacations. We get some figurative language there, a little simile comparing cancer to the vacation about the way that her mom utilizes that, and we get an idea of her mom's manipulative nature through that figurative language. Again, the writing in this is great. I think the very next page, page 8, actually had another great use of simile where it says, for as far back as I can remember, the air in the house has felt like a held breath, like we're all in a holding pattern waiting for Mom's cancer to come back. The chapter ends with Janette finally making her birthday candle wish, which is her blowing out the candles on the cake and thinking to herself, I wish that Mom will stay alive another year. From the very beginning, we get this setup that Janette is worried about her mom eventually dying. Her mom is always bringing up that she has cancer or that her cancer could come back at any moment. And young Janette is terrified of this, and she believes that she has to wish on her birthday cake every year that her mom will stay alive yet another year. This is going to become a common theme throughout the book, where every time she has a birthday and the cake comes out, she needs to wish for her mom to stay alive again. She feels the need to. She feels that without giving that wish, her mom might possibly die. And then, of course, her mom does eventually die, and then the title of the book is I'm Glad My Mom Died. And it's interesting how we're setting up this wish. She has to wish for it. She so badly wants her mom to stay alive, and then in the end, it ends up being the opposite as what she wanted. Great setup of dramatic irony within the context of the story as well. I'm blown away by the writing of this. I think this is the best written celebrity memoir I've ever read, honestly. Chapter 2 starts off with some more great narrative voice where she says, "One more row of clips and we'll be done," Mom said, the butterfly clips that she's carefully pinning into my head. I hate this hairstyle. The rows of tightly wound hair fastened into place with painful, scalp-gripping little clips. I'd rather be wearing a baseball cap, but Mom loves this style and she says it makes me look pretty, so butterfly clips it is. "Okay, Mommy," I say, swinging my legs back and forth while I sit on the closed toilet seat lid. The leg swing is a nice touch. Selling it. So we've got two great things here. First of all, excellent word choice where she says that her mom is pinning the butterfly clips into her head instead of pinning them into her hair. You get this idea that it feels more violent, that it feels like the clips are jamming into her head and that this is an action she doesn't want. It's hurting her and her mom doesn't care. And then I really like how she wrote the leg swing is a nice touch, selling it. I think that the voice was great there, and it also was foreshadowing this idea that her mom really wants Janette to be an actress, and Janette almost has to be on as an actress all the time just to be pleasing her mom because she's almost always putting on a performance for her mom. We then get the backstory that Janette's mom always wanted to be an actress when she was growing up, but her parents, who were Janette's grandparents, they didn't let her for some reason. They said, no, you can't be an actress. And this mom has always been very bitter about that and is now trying to push this dream onto her kids. But since this is told through Janette's voice of innocence, here's what we get. So she says, "I want to give you the life I never had, Net. I want to give you the life I deserve, the life my parents wouldn't let me have. I think you should act. I think you would be a great little actress, blonde, blue-eyed. You're exactly what they love in that town." "In what town?" "Hollywood." "Isn't Hollywood far away?" "An hour and a half. Granted, freeways are involved. I'd have to learn how to drive freeways. But it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for you, Net, because I'm not like my parents. I want what's best for you. Always. You know that, right?" From there, we've got this. The mom is being manipulative. She always sets it up as, I want what's best for you. She continues to implant that idea into her head. And from the time Janette is a very little girl, the idea is what's best for her is to be an actress because that's what her mom said it was. And at that age, what can we do but trust what our parents tell us? Disgusting manipulation from the start. On page 14, Janette goes to an audition with her mom, and her mom's signing a piece of paper. She's signing like a contract, and it says, "The contract says that the agent gets 20% and we get 80%. 15% of that 80% will go into an account called a Coogan account, which you can access once you're 18. That's all the money most parents let their kids have. But you're lucky. Mommy's not going to take any of your money except for my salary, plus essentials." So obviously the mom is being manipulative, but trying to phrase it as a good thing, which is, ugh. But I also thought it was interesting that I brought up the Coogan account, especially because this mom does end up being so exploitative. But for anyone who doesn't know, the Coogan account is named after Jackie Coogan. Jackie Coogan was a big child actor in Charlie Chaplin movies way back in the day. And when he was a star in the Charlie Chaplin films, his parents ended up taking all the money that he earned from him and basically bankrupting him, leading him to sue them in this big lawsuit, which was kind of the start of this idea of, well, maybe child actors should get some access to their money. Maybe parents shouldn't be allowed to just take it all, that kind of thing. So that was kind of the start of that law, and then it becomes the Coogan account. But still, it's only 15% of 80% because 20% goes to the agent, 80% goes to the family, and 15% of that 80% is for Janette herself, and her mom is taking a bunch of the rest of the money but trying to frame it as, oh, you know, this is good. I'm doing you a favor. Interesting. Didn't a scene like that happen between Keenan and Kel in the movie Good Burger?
That's great. Now, you do remember that it was my idea to put the sauce on Good Burgers in the first place, right? Yeah, you should get some of the money I received. I'm glad to hear you say that. In fact, since we're going to be in business together, I thought that maybe we should sign a little contract just to make our partnership official. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah. I know some of these words. Yeah. So what does it all mean, Dexter? Well, it's quite simple, really. Of all the money that Good Burger makes off your sauce, you get to keep 20%. Cool, okay. And then I'll keep the other 80%, so it works out cool for both of us.
Wasn't that movie produced by the same person who produced iCarly. Just an interesting comparison. Next, we start to learn about Jennette's complicated relationship with the Mormon religion. What's interesting from the start is that she loves going to Mormon church, which is interesting because I know, when I was a kid, I didn't go to Mormon church. I went to Catholic church when I was a kid, but I thought church was boring. A lot of kids I know think church is boring. But in this, Jennette kind of talks about how her house was a hoarder house. Her mom was always hoarding things. Her mom had a rough temper, and she just kind of liked to get out of the house. She liked to go to a different location, so going to church was that escape for her, and she loved church. I really thought that this was going to lead into how being Mormon placed all this pressure on her, or the pressures of the Mormon church, but it really doesn't go into that because Jennette's mom is not very committed to being Mormon. And that's not usually what you hear. For when you hear most stories of ex-Mormons, which I don't believe Jennette is a practicing Mormon anymore because later in the book she kind of talks about not being that into religion anymore. For most ex-Mormons, you hear that like their family was so devoutly into it and it controlled their life. But Jennette's mom is actually kind of non-committal to the Mormon religion, which is very interesting to read. And I thought this passage about it was really funny. So it says, the church my family goes to is the Garden Grove 6th Ward of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Grandma was baptized a Mormon when she was 8, and then Mom was baptized a Mormon when she was 8, just like I'm going to be baptized a Mormon when I'm 8 because that's when Joseph Smith said you become accountable for your sins. Before then, you can sin scot-free. Even though both Grandma and Mom were baptized, they didn't go to church. I think they wanted the perk of going to heaven without doing the legwork. But then right after Mom was diagnosed with cancer, we started attending church service. I just knew the Lord would help me get better if I was a good and faithful servant, Mom explained to me. Oh, so we started going to church when we wanted something from God? I asked. No. I thought that was hilarious, is when kids pick up on those things that adults don't want to say, they say the adult's quiet part out loud, and then the adult is like, wait, is that what I'm doing? I thought that was very funny and also indicative of the way that the mom really does view most of what she does as transactional. On page 42, we start to get an idea of some of the specific ways that Jennette's mom is manipulating her. So after Jennette does this audition that she's very uncomfortable with and doesn't really want to do, but her mom told her, if you do it, we'll go out for ice cream. So they go out for ice cream, and while they're waiting for the ice cream, her mom says, you want nutty coconut? And she says, no, I think I'll do cookies and cream. Mom turns to me, alarmed. You don't want nutty coconut? I'm frozen. I don't know what to say. Mom seems upset that I haven't chosen nutty coconut. I pause, waiting to see how she reacts before making my next move. There's a beat where we're both just standing at the ice cream counter looking at each other instead of at the ice cream. Then Mom's posture softens and her eyes well with tears. Nutty coconut's been your favorite for 8 months. You're changing, growing up. I take her hand in mine. Never mind, I want nutty coconut. You're sure? Positive, I nod. Mom orders a kid's scoop for us to share and hands the coupon to the teenage employee with so much black makeup around her eyes that she looks like a raccoon. We sit at one of the little booths to enjoy the ice cream together. I'm secretly sick of the coconut flavor, but I'm sure to make lots of so Mom thinks I love it. So much going on in that short little area, right? We get this foreshadowing of the mom being scared of Jennette growing up, potentially because it will loosen her hold on her, and this mom is very into having all the control. We see that Jennette kind of does whatever her mom wants. She tries to assert her opinion, but then her mom starts crying and she's like, nope. I want to please my mom. And then we get the mom ordering a kid's scoop for the two of them to share. One scoop of ice cream meant for a child to be shared between a child and an adult. And that's when we start to see the food restriction coming in, but this is more foreshadowing. The actual food restrictions going to start later, but we start to see patterns of this mom has food restrictive behaviors from the beginning. She's going, she's acting. Even after the audition she didn't want to do, she still has to put on an act and still has to do a performance for her mom. I thought that there was a paragraph on page 48 that once again did a good job of weaving together that childhood voice that she's taking on the persona of while writing this, along with the reflective voice of past experience and what she learned. That is in the context of Jennette has to go to a dance class because one of the roles she's auditioning for requires that she dances. And she says, I actually like dance a lot. I like moving my body. It gets me out of my head. And I like most of the girls I dance with. They've been nice and welcoming to me. I secretly like being away from Mom too. She doesn't watch me dance the way she watches me act. Maybe it's because she didn't want to be a dancer growing up. She wanted to be an actress, and maybe Mom only sits in when I'm being the thing she wanted to be. I don't think when most of us were kids, we were probably able to necessarily put words to the phenomenon of feeling like maybe our parents are living vicariously through us. So it definitely feels like there's a bit of adult reflective voice back in there as well, and I think meshing those together makes a memoir really strong. I think page 54 had a good example of how the dialogue that Jennette selects to put in the book does a good job of illustrating illustrating the dark humor tone of it. Earlier it had talked about how, you know, they lived in a hoarder house, and so because so much stuff was being hoarded, all of the beds and all the space in the bedroom was covered, so oftentimes the kids all had to sleep on these Costco mats out in the living room because their mom and dad they hoarded too much stuff and covered up the beds. So finally Janette was like, you know what, okay, I'm gonna buy myself a bed with this money that I made on this commercial. So it says, enough residuals to pay for the oak bunk bed I bought for myself. Mom did as she promised and cleared the space in Grandma and Grandpa's room for my bed. She wound up filling the top bunk with stacks of papers and old toys and books and things though, which was a little frustrating since I had initially wanted to sleep on the top bunk. Mom said it was too risky anyway and that she never would have let me. We can't risk you falling out and cracking your head open like when Dustin fell out of the stroller at Knott's Berry Farm. I've never forgiven myself for that, and I'd never forgive myself for this, even though they did give us some free boysenberry punch, which was nice. That stream of consciousness dialogue coming from her mom, it's funny, but it's also sad, right? You get that mix of emotions, which is the theme throughout this entire book. Chapter 14 is where Janette starts to detail her struggles with having OCD, and as I've mentioned on this channel many times before, I myself have OCD. It's been finding out about it and learning how to manage it has greatly shaped the way that I live my life, and when people talk about their early childhood experiences with OCD, I find those usually extremely relatable. And I think it's interesting here how Janette is not only starting to develop OCD, but she's also Mormon. And a lot of times I hear stories of how people who have OCD, when they grow up with a religious background, the religious element often makes it a lot worse. Because in religion, you're taught like that you can talk to God. You're taught that your thoughts and your actions can determine the course of events in the world and that you have some sort of spiritual connection. And because of that, often people with OCD get very nervous that they're going to think or accidentally do the wrong thing and that they need to do their rituals, otherwise God might notice and kill everyone or something. So that intersection of OCD with a strong religious background can be extremely anxiety inducing. And this is where Janette is sitting in the waiting area about to go into an audition when she's a kid, and she thinks she first hears the Holy Spirit talking to her. Janette, I, the Spirit of the Holy Ghost, command you to cross your name out in the sign-in sheet, go to the restroom, touch your underwear band 5 times in a row, twirl on one foot, unlock and relock the bathroom door 5 times, come back and re-sign the sign-in sheet. I'm elated. He has spoken. The Holy Ghost, aka my still small voice, has finally spoken to me. I've been waiting for him to speak to me since my 8th birthday when I had my baptism. The gift of the Holy Ghost was definitely the gift I was most excited for. A friend from the church did get me some gooey slime though, which was a close second. The Holy Ghost is a great guy up in heaven who helps out Heavenly Father and Jesus. He's kind of like them in spirit and attitude, but he's different too because he lives in each and every one of us Mormons. And every day we can talk to him whenever we want to, and he can talk to us, guiding us to do what is right, which is whatever he tells us to do. We're so lucky. From the adult voice of her writing it now, there's an interesting, like, sardonic tone to it, but you can tell that when she was a kid, she felt this genuinely, and I thought that was an interesting commentary. Then in chapter 17, Janette's grandpa notices that these behaviors seem like they're more OCD behaviors rather than just religious rituals, but her mom is hearing none of it. Deb, I think Janette's got OCD, Grandpa says heavily. He doesn't know I can hear. He thinks I'm asleep on my Costco mat while he and Mom watch Jay Leno. But I'm not asleep. I just don't like Jay Leno very much. So I rest my eyes while I wait for Conan to come on. Oh, please. I can tell by Mom's tone that she waves her hand dismissively while she says it. You ought to take her to a therapist, Grandpa says. Come on. Janette is not some troubled girl with tics. I don't know. I see her doing all her little rituals constantly, and she looks so frantic when she's doing them. Makes me feel bad. Dad, please, she's fine. You're just a worrier. Now let's watch. Kevin Eubanks is so charming. Look at that smile. Grandpa pauses to watch. I hear the crowd laugh 2 separate times, then he speaks again. Maybe we should take her to the doctor, just to check. She might need some professional help. She does not, Mom says sternly. Janette's perfect, all right? She does not need help. They go back to watching Jay. I keep my eyes shut and think about what Mom said. That I'm perfect. I know this is important for her to believe, even though I'm not sure why. I'm not allowed to have any problems. Then I think about what Grandpa said. That he thinks I've got OCD because of my rituals. Frankly, I wish Grandpa would have just asked me about my rituals because then I could have explained to him that it's not OCD, it's the Holy Ghost. I wonder if he would have believed me. And then I wonder if I even believe myself. Excellent use of setting a scene there. Excellent use of dialogue. Excellent job of her showing what she's hearing and taking in with her 5 senses and then how her mind is reflecting on it. These seem like very basic things to break down, but too many of these books that I've read lack these things and it makes the writing boring, but her writing and her voice is very strong and interesting here. Page 79 is the first time in the book when Janette finally speaks up to her mom and tells her that acting isn't really her thing. Janette goes to this audition where she doesn't do very well and it was emotionally exhausting to her. And then she basically turns to her mom and says, I don't want to act it, I say before I even realize I've said it. Mom looks at me in the rearview mirror. A mix of shock and disappointment fills her eyes. I immediately regret saying anything. Don't be silly. You love acting. It's your favorite thing in the world. Mom says in a way that makes it sound like a threat. This is a very extreme example of this, obviously, but I think it's also just very common for parents to project their emotions onto their kids, because obviously, as parents often say, there's no parenting rule book. When you have kids, you don't know what's going to happen. Anything in the world could happen, and you have to be ready for all kinds of circumstances. And I agree that parenting is probably hard. I myself have never had kids, so I don't have any room to talk. However, I think it is often too common for parents to project their own emotions because, hey, this kid is raised by you. This kid came from you. This kid probably has some of you in them. But that doesn't mean that your kid has the same perspective as you on everything. It doesn't mean they feel emotions the same way you do. It doesn't mean they have the same preferences as you. And oftentimes we will see a lot lesser versions of this, even from parents who aren't abusive, even from parents who are overall wonderful parents, but this is just a thing that's so easy for them to do. Like a kid will say something and then their parents might be like, oh, you don't really feel that way, do you? Or a kid will say something and their parents will be like, well, don't you think this, or don't you feel this way about this, asking them a leading question leading into that confirmation bias, which implants that idea in their head. Instead of asking the kid, well, do you really feel that way? What makes you feel that way? And exploring to see that, a lot of times parents approach it from this idea of, no, you don't feel that way. And I think we just hear that a lot. I've seen it happen a lot. I've heard a lot of parents say it before, a lot of times even parents with the best of intentions. And I think that in the book is just a very extreme example of how far that can go, where Janette says, you know, acting isn't my thing. And her mom basically does the you don't really feel that way, do you thing, but she takes it to the next level. She goes, acting is your favorite thing in the world. She tells her how she feels about it. And I think when you're a child, that is one of the most frustrating, is adults always trying to tell you how you feel. Nobody knows how I feel better than I do. Nobody knows how any given person feels better than they do, even if that person is a child, and even if they don't have all the words to express all of their emotions yet. Nobody can fully read their minds. So I think this is a very extreme example of how when you take that too far, it can have these drastic effects of saying, no, you love acting. It's your favorite thing. You love it. And trying to convince her of it. However, Janette does try to actually ask to quit. She keeps it up. She keeps standing up for herself. She says, no, I really don't want to. I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. Mom's face looks like she just ate a lemon. It contorts in a way that terrifies me. I know what's coming next. You can't quit, she sobs. This was our chance. This was our chance. Of course, it's our chance and not Janette's chance, right? And then her mom turns on a Phil Collins CD and starts singing, and she asks Janette to start singing along with her. So Janette starts singing, and she says, I throw on my best fake smile to go with it. Maybe I wasn't able to bring the tears for Without a Trace, which was the audition she failed. But I was able to bring the smile for Mom on our drive home. Either way, it's performed. And I think that's the first acknowledgement that Janette gives, that she has to be on as an actress all the time with her mom because her whole life with her is essentially a lie. Whenever I review a lot of celebrity memoirs, I always talk about how writing is a skill, and you can be a very skilled actor, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a very skilled writer. And throughout this process, I have talked about how Janette is a very skilled writer, assuming she wrote this herself, which I do think she did. At least I get that vibe. But I've been talking about how she does really have that skill for writing. And I appreciate how that does come out in this book, in that Janette starts to show a love for writing when she is a child. I believe she's, 11, 12 years old at this point. Her mom is back in the hospital, and she says, I'm looking down at the papers in front of me, the stack of 110 freshly printed papers filled with size 12 Courier new font. This is Henry Road, my first screenplay. I printed the screenplay out because I can't wait to show it to Mom. I know she could use a pick-me-up since she's in the hospital right now. So her mom's back in the hospital and is sick again, and Janette is so excited to show her the screenplay she wrote. She seems to have had a great time actually writing this. And this brought back, I was always writing things as a child too, which I'm sure you guys know because I'm writing things all the time as an adult as well. But I remember that early excitement when you would finish one of your first projects. As I did the same thing where I'd go into size 12 Courier new font and write screenplays on the computer and print them out and give them to people to read. And there's such a strong sense of excitement with having finished something as a kid, having finished something that's entirely your own and that you're actually proud of in a creative endeavor. I knew exactly the feeling she was talking about here that was super relatable. And I also like that she set up that writing was her passion because she really kills it with the writing in this book. So it really does show that it's paying off. However, this scene is set up and built up for her being so excited, and of course there's going to be a massive letdown. So she gets to the hospital and she gives her mom the screenplay. She thumbs the cover page, but not with the pride I have when I thumb it. Her thumbing has a sadness to it. What? I ask. It's just... Mom looks down and smiles wistfully. This is one of her most rehearsed looking expressions to me. I've never once seen her do this expression and felt like it was really coming from her in that moment. It always feels forced. It's just what? I ask. It's just, I hope you don't like writing more than you like acting. You're so good at acting. So good at it. And then, of course, Janette has to do what her mom wants because she feels manipulated by her. So she says, of course I don't like writing more than acting. I could never. Mom doesn't notice that I'm lying, even though it feels so obvious in my bones that I am. I absolutely prefer writing to acting. Well, good, Mom says as she eyes me as if she's deciding whether or not she can trust my response. Writers dress frumpy and get fat, you know? I would never want your little actress's peach butt to turn into a big giant writer's watermelon butt. So I'm a writer and I have a thick ass, and trust me, it's great. Janette's mom was wrong. She's wrong about a lot of things. She's wrong about everything. That's kind of the theme of this whole book. This is also a place where we get Janette's mom obsessing over her body and talking about her daughter's butt in a weird way when her daughter is a child. We're gonna get more of the really creepy stuff that her mom does in relation to her body in a little bit. It's really scary. I thought that some of the paragraphs at the start of chapter 25 had a lot of layers of meaning to them, which I really liked in the way that they were written, in how the words came out. So she's talking about how her favorite color's purple. She says, I can't let Mom know I'm into purple since Mom prefers pink. She would be heartbroken if I suddenly announce I've switched my favorite color to one that isn't also hers. It is an honor that Mom cares about me so much that something like me having my own favorite color would devastate her. True love. I like the way she said true love there. Just such a short 2-word sentence that packs so much punch. One, because it's a short sentence after a series of longer sentences, so the variation in sentence length. I definitely think it added like a rhythmic quality. And just the way that it has multiple meanings, it kind of reminded me, so I used to teach poetry workshops to kids back before COVID started, and one of the things we would talk about in poetry workshops was the idea of repetition within poetry. And this isn't poetry, but I think a similar idea kind of applies here. We would talk about repetition in poetry and how if you have a poem that tells a story, there will often be some lines that are repeated throughout it as kind of a motif, as a thread, and what that line means in context at the start of a poem versus what that line means in context in the middle versus the end of the poem might have a completely different meaning, and that those meanings can shift over the course of time based on the character's perspective and how the character relates to that line. I thought the line true love kind of functioned in a similar way because she's saying true love. If you're taking it from her childlike voice, from her present tense writing in the mindset she's in right now, she legitimately does believe that it is true love that her mom wants her to have the same favorite color as her, that her mom wants them to be so much alike. She believes that that does come from a place of love. And then it has a sarcastic tone and it has somewhat of an ominous tone if you look at it from the perspective that she's actually writing it from, which is her as an adult reflecting on this because she knows what's coming now. So that line having those multiple layers of meaning, I thought really gave it a strong impact, even though it was only a short 2-word, 2-syllable sentence. Janette is talking about how she is writing poems now. So she says, I'm planning what poem I'll write for Mom this weekend. Since Mom's not a fan of me writing screenplays, I've taken an indefinite hiatus from those, but she is very supportive of me writing quick little poems about how much I love her. So I keep up with writing this way now. I just wrote, wow. Then throughout pages 88, 89, and 90, it starts to lead into one of the scariest things. So warning ahead, we're going to talk about some body image stuff, some abuse stuff, and some ED stuff. So Janette, as a preteen, has noticed that her starting to grow, she's starting to get some boobs. Because, as we're going to learn throughout this book, her mom has given her no sex ed, no puberty talk, nothing. She doesn't know what's happening, and because of her mom's breast cancer, Janette is initially terrified that the lumps on her chest are cancer growing in, not that they're boobs. So her mom says, oh sweetie, Mom half laughs as she runs her fingers back and forth along my puffy lumped nipple on the right and then over my smooth flat nipple on the left to compare. That's not cancer. Then what is it? You're just getting boobies. Oh no, the only thing worse than a cancer diagnosis is a growing up diagnosis. I am horrified of growing up. First, I'm small for my age, which is a benefit in showbiz because I can book roles for characters younger than me. I can work longer hours on set and have to take fewer breaks by law. Logistics aside, I'm more cooperative and can take direction better than those 7-year-old scumbags. So I like that there's some humor in there, but there's also this whole dark side of like, she's terrified of getting bigger because as an older actor, she can do a lot more legally than actors can do, so she can win those roles over them, and her mom's putting these pressure on her to get all the roles. And then, of course, her mom wants her to stay small and young so that she can keep making money in those roles, so here we go. Mom is constantly reminding me how good it is that I look so young for my age. You'll book more, baby. You'll book a lot more. If I start to grow up, Mom won't love me as much. She often weeps and holds me really tight and says she just wants me to stay small and young. It breaks my heart when she does this. I wish I could stop time. Well, is there anything I could do to stop the boobies from coming in? I ask Mom nervously. Now, if Jennette's mom were an ethical mom, she would basically give her this talk and say, unfortunately, no, you can't. This is part of growing up. If you are having some issues with your body image surrounding this, we can talk to a therapist. We can start having some conversations and having an open discussion about this. But no, instead, Jennette's mom decides to come up with a way to help her stop growing boobs. What can I do to stop the boobies from coming? I repeat, leaning further into my question now that I know it satisfies Mommy so much. Well, sweetheart, if you really want to know how to stay small, there's this secret thing you can do. It's called calorie restriction. So now we start full-blown into the ED. I start shrinking by the week as Mom and I team up to count our calories every night and plan our meals for the next day. We're keeping me on a 1,000 calorie diet, but I have the smart idea that if I only eat half my food, I'll only be receiving half the calories, which means that I'll be shrinking twice as fast. I proudly show my half-eaten portions to Mom after every meal. She beams. Each Sunday, she weighs me and measures my thighs with a measuring tape. After a few weeks of our routine, she provides me with a stack of diet books that I finish quickly. I learn the value of eating water-dense fruits and vegetables like jicama and watermelon. I learn how helpful cayenne and chili peppers are for increasing your metabolism. I learn that coffee is an appetite suppressant, so I start drinking decaf black alongside Mom. Drinking coffee in any form is technically against the church's rules. Well, it's decaf, so I'm sure God would make an exception, Mom says. And I nod like I agree, even though I'm pretty sure the God I've learned about doesn't make exceptions. I notice that most foods add a little body weight to me, 0.4 of a pound or so. I know this because I weigh myself 5 times a day. 5 is my lucky number, so this amount of daily weigh-in seems appropriate. In addition to the absolute horror of this, to her mom encouraging it and instructing her in this and teaching her, a child, how to do this, in addition to the horror of this, keep in mind that her mom is in denial about the fact that she has OCD. Janette, throughout the book, when talking about her OCD, talks about how a lot of her rituals involve doing things 5 times. 5 is the number that sticks with her. So now she's weighing herself 5 times a day. It seems in here like an OCD ritual. I really appreciate that this book covered kind of the intersection of OCD and eating disorders, body dysmorphia, that type of thing, because, you know, I myself am a person who have had OCD my whole life and have also dealt with body dysmorphia and have dealt with EDs long in the past and things like that. So it's really interesting to see other people showing that connection and showing how those rituals become part of things that are detrimental to your health when you develop the eating disorder along with it. It's a very scary intersection to be in. Page 92. We're about 6 months into our calorie restricting plan and you can really see the difference. I'm down 3 sizes and I'm now wearing a kid size 7 slim. The Holy Spirit tells me to touch the word slim on my clothing tags 5 times every day because that ritual along with my restriction will keep me small. Thanks, Holy Spirit. I'm impressed that she was able to write it in this voice. She has a wonderful, reflective sense of humor about this, in addition to acknowledging how absolutely fucked up this whole thing was. The writing in this book is phenomenal, and so much of it just hit home so hard. I'm grateful that I did not have an abusive mother. My mom is great. My mom and I are still really close. But I did deal with a lot of similar mental health struggles, so reading this and feeling validated in that way it's just meant so much to me in this book. Okay, now we're about to get into the SA level stuff that her mom did. So let's just know that that's coming right now. I'm going to read some excerpts of what happened here. Chapter 27 is probably the most sickening chapter in this entire book. We find out how Jennette's mom has been touching her in the shower. Net, shower time, Mom shouts from another room. My whole body freezes. Oh no, not shower time. I've dreaded showers for a while, 5 years or so. Whenever it was that I started to feel uncomfortable that Mom still showers me. She doesn't mean to make me uncomfortable, I don't think. She says she has to shower me because I wouldn't know how to shampoo and condition my own hair. She says maybe if it wasn't so long or such a specific texture, she wouldn't have to, but because it is those things, and since she was a professional hairstylist, it just makes sense for her to do it. Mom showers me with Scotty sometimes. That's her older brother. He's almost 16 at this point. I get really embarrassed when she showers us together. I can tell he does too. We usually just look away from each other, and Scott distracts himself by drawing Pokemon in the fogged glass. He does a pretty good Charizard. When she showers us together, Mom says it's because she's got too much to do. Scott asked if he could shower himself once. Mom sobbed and said she didn't want him to grow up, so he never asked again after that. Okay, sorry guys, just get ready. Whether or not Scott's there with me, Mom gives me a breast and front butt exam, which is what she calls my private parts. She says she wants to make sure I don't have any mysterious lumps or bumps because those could be cancer. I say, okay, because I definitely don't want cancer, and since Mom's had it and all, she would know if I do. That's when Janette talks about how during these times she would dissociate and imagine herself in Disney World and things like that, which I've heard is a common thing to happen for people who are being sexually abused. The way that the mom justifies this too is just so sickening, that she's like, she's utilizing her power and her position of authority, not only to command this, but to command it in a way where she's trying to justify it. She's trying not only to say, you must do this because I said so, because Janette could theoretically rebel against that. Instead, she's trying to fully convince her that this is the best option. She's saying, well, Janette, I was a former hairstylist, so I'm the one who knows how to condition your hair. So if I don't condition your hair, and then later in the book, if Janette ever wants to shower by herself and she doesn't get a role, her mom's like, well, that's because you didn't let me condition your hair. You had bad hair in the audition, so you need to let me do it. So she uses it fully manipulative like that, like, well, you're not going to win this role if you don't let me condition your hair for you. And then, of course, I need to touch your body in these ways that you wouldn't be comfortable with, because I know what cancer feels like because I've had it, and it's important that I can check you for that. Just, this is straight up sexual abuse. That's what this is. And of course, the SA style abuse only gets worse because shortly after that, Janette finally gets the acting role that defines her career, which is playing the character Sam on iCarly. And now we're about to get into the abuse that she suffered at Nickelodeon. And some of these things in this book definitely, in my opinion, blew open some of the controversies that have been going on in the child actor world in general, some of the massive ethical concerns. Again, I thought it was interesting she brought up the Coogan account at the beginning because Jackie Coogan's case was a landmark case in child actors' rights, and I'm wondering if this book is going to be a landmark document in child actors' rights in the future as well, because some of the stuff that we're about to see she went through at Nickelodeon was so gross.
She really has never had her first kiss. So who wants to play a brand new game here on Quinn Reviews iCarly? I call it, was this line written by a woman or a man?
You shocked? Well, yeah, but just 'cause you always seemed so willing.
I wish I had an answer to that riddle, but when you go to the Wikipedia page, the name on this one's just static. I don't know why this keeps happening.
She never refers to the creator of iCarly by name, she just calls him the creator. And I actually think her use of calling him the creator was interesting, because it almost seems symbolic of like the Mormon discussion. She talks about being Mormon, and a lot of people who are ex-Mormons feel like some of the communities that they were in were cult-like. And by the way, I just want to be clear, I'm not saying that all Mormons are in a cult. I know plenty of people in my chat who will talk about having good experiences with the Mormon religion, but I also know some specific communities where I know people who were in those, and the Mormon church in their community use that religion as a way to manipulate people and to cover up abuse and things like that. And so a lot of times you hear stories about that from specific religious communities, like a lot of Mormon communities. And so by calling the leader of the show she was on the creator, it gives that kind of religious cult-like vibe in the same way, and it almost felt like she was drawing a parallel between the two. I don't know if that was intentional, but it felt a little bit symbolic in that way, and either way I appreciate the writing. She's talking about doing a wardrobe fitting for the show iCarly. She has to try on bathing suits. She says, I hate this. I want to be done with wardrobe fitting. I asked if I could please just try on one pieces with board shorts the way that I feel most comfortable in a bathing suit, being covered up. But our wardrobe designer said that the creator explicitly asked for bikinis. So then she takes a photo of it and says, what do you say? Want to try the last bikini? She asks me like she's tempting me. It confuses me when people throw a spin on the delivery of something to overcompensate for the fact that the thing they're delivering is unpleasant. Can I just, can I not, I ask? Can I leave it at the one I just tried? Well, he wants options, the wardrobe designer says, pulling an over-exaggerated you-know-him kind of expression that doesn't resonate because I don't know him. Not really, I've only met him a few times. He seems effusive and boisterous to me, but Mom says she's heard rumblings from crew members that he's got a hair-trigger temper and to be sure not to get on his bad side. I mean, that kind of does go with the whole Holy Spirit thing. You gotta please God, you gotta please the creator. Now this is the creator of the show that she's working on. You gotta please him, you can't get on his bad side, you have to do what he asks. If the rituals he's telling you and forcing you to do are to put on the bikini, then you better put on the bikini. And we get a little bit of this dude being... Later, Janette is out with her mom and the creator of iCarly at a lunch, and this is how he's talking to her. He's calling her his favorite little actress. He's saying that she's so much better at acting than all the other kids on the shows, right? It says, this is how conversations with the creator usually start. He'll heap the compliments on while undercutting other talent that he works with. I appreciate the compliments. The creator's approval means a lot to me. He's the reason I'm a series regular on a TV show. He's the reason my family and I don't have to worry about money anymore. But at the same time, I wonder if he's trying to pit me and his other talent against one another. I wonder if he says the same sorts of things to each of his talents so that we stay in line and think we're in his good favor. I wonder this because now that we've worked on an entire season of television together, I've had plenty of time to get familiar with the creator's ways, to understand him. I feel like the creator has two distinct sides. One is generous and over-the-top complimentary. He can make anyone feel like the most important person in the world. I've seen him do this when he made the entire crew give our production designer a 5-minute standing ovation for the jail set he built in 2 days, or when he gave a speech thanking our stunt coordinator. The coordinator cried with gratitude. The creator knows how to make someone feel important. The other side is mean-spirited, controlling, and terrifying. The creator can tear you down and humiliate you. I've seen him do this when he fired a 6-year-old on the spot for messing up a few lines on a rehearsal day, and when a boom operator accidentally dropped a boom into a shot and the creator stomped over to him and screamed in his face that he was responsible for ruining a magical take and he hoped that he would regret it for the rest of his life. I believe this is what people call love bombing, when you heap on the compliments to someone to get in their good favor so that you can later manipulate them and get away with abusing them. What a disgusting human. Let's stay on topic with the creator for a little bit and see what else he did to Janette. Come on, take a sip. No thanks. Come on. I've never had alcohol before, and I'm only 18. Couldn't I get in trouble? No one's looking, Janette. You're fine. I don't know. The Victorious kids get drunk together all the time. The iCarly kids are so wholesome. We need to give you guys a little edge. The creator always compares us iCarly kids to the kids on his other show, Victorious. I think he thinks it'll make us try harder. That's basically where he pressures her to drink some alcohol with the whole, the kids on my other show will drink, why won't you? Pressuring a teenage girl to drink alcohol with him. Disgusting. Then, later in the same meeting, here's what he does. He reaches out and places his hand on my knee. I get goosebumps. You're cold, he says, concerned. I don't think that's why I got goosebumps, but I agree. It's always best to agree with the creator. Here, take my jacket. He takes his coat off and drapes it around me. He pats my shoulders, and then the pat turns into a massage. Oof, you're so tense. Yeah. Anyway, what was I saying? He asks while he keeps massaging me. My shoulders do have a lot of knots in them, but I don't want the creator to be the one rubbing them out. I want to say something to tell him to stop, but I'm so scared of offending him. Then the very next chapter starts with Janette's mom is having some health issues once again and is now in a wheelchair, and Janette has to briefly move away to do some more acting stuff so her mom can stay at home and focus on getting better, and Janette's mom is mad that she does not get to live with her. Janette's basically like, it's just for work days, I'll come home on the weekends, and her mom sighs and says, I'm hardly gonna see my baby. Who's gonna keep your eating on track? How are you gonna shampoo your hair? Well, I did it on tour. Yeah, but I saw pictures. It looked greasy, she sniffles. So her mom's like crying and putting on this whole manipulative act, and it's like, but your hair looked terrible. I needed to be shampooing it for you. Who's gonna do your hair? So while Janette's moving away into this new apartment for work, her mom's basically, laying on the manipulation thick, and then she hands Janette this DVD and says, here, this is a gift for you. So she gives her the gift, and while she gives her the gift, Janette's kind of thinking to herself like, I love my mom, but it might be nice to get to do some things on my own for a little bit, to kind of try living by myself. I've never really gotten to do that before. I'm an adult now. Let's give it a try. She has a little bit of excitement while she does feel guilty for hurting her mom. She's gotten more desperate these past few months. She's gotten more desperate, and I've gotten more angry. I don't know if my anger is a direct result of her desperation, but it's at least a partial result of it. I can't fucking handle how desperate she is. The sicker she gets, the cuter she becomes in her intonation. The more innocent she becomes, the more she pleads with me. It's like she's begging me to not slip away away and I want to scream, "You're the one slipping away." I could swear she could tell that I want to scream because she doubles down on the cuteness, which makes me want to double down on the scream. But I don't. I keep it in. And then she looks at me with her big eyes, and I know she doesn't. She couldn't, but I almost feel like she's enjoying this. I almost feel like she's enjoying the pain, like it's a representation to her of how much I care. She opens the DVD, and her mom says, "I figured we could watch it tonight after you unpack." "Oh, okay, that'll be great." Yeah, Mom says, removing her hat to scratch her bald head. And then, I was thinking, I don't have chemo tomorrow, so I could spend the night. You know, if you want. She looks at me doe-eyed, wringing her hands nervously. I immediately know what this is. This is not Mom spending the night. This is Mom spending every night for the foreseeable future. This is Mom moving in. I don't want her to spend the night. "Sure, you can spend the night," I say. And I continue to say it every single night for the next 3 months until eventually she doesn't ask it anymore. She just expects it. This is not my first ever solo apartment. This is our apartment. We are roommates. Shortly after this, I think Jennette's around 19 years old and she gets a boyfriend. Of course, because Jennette has been abused by people older than her whole life. Her boyfriend is, I want to say, like 33 years old. He's significantly older than her, which in my opinion is creepy because he definitely does have some issues that he tries to brush under the rug, including a drinking problem, including driving while he's drunk, including starting to date Jennette while he still had another girlfriend and then breaking up with that girlfriend and then pressuring Jennette to have sex with him before she was ready. That whole scene is really gross. I'm not good. But then basically she ends up in a relationship with this guy for about a year and they decide to go on a trip together. And her mom, she knows that her mom won't be comfortable with her going on this trip, so she doesn't tell her mom about it. And then eventually, while she's out on the trip, the paparazzi gets a picture of her with him. It goes up online. Her mom finds out and is furious. Her mom is sending her all these messages like, "You're a disgusting little whore. I can't believe I raised you like this," which is wild. We've never seen her mom like this before. But then on page 156, after getting like 45 missed calls from her mom, she gets an email from her mom, and it says, "This one's titled Letter to Your Fans." I open it up and find a scathing note attached. A note Mom tells me she's posted to an online Jennette McCurdy fan club in an attempt to get my fans to flee from me. She said that she's going to steal all my fans, that she deserves them more than I do, that she swears to God she's going to sign up for Vine and they're all going to love her comedy videos. I wonder if Mom's bluffing, so I check the fan club she referenced. No bluff. There's Mom's message right on the front page of the fan club. I almost can't believe it. I go back to my email and another new message from Mom has popped up. I open it. "You caused my cancer to come back. I hope you're happy knowing this. You have to live with this fact. You gave me cancer." That's disgusting to do to any human being. To do to a human being who you are denying has OCD, who very well is going to start believing that they did actually give you cancer. I'm beside myself. This is so fucking disgusting. We're gonna skip ahead to much later in the book. There's a lot of other interesting stuff going on in there, but I want to get back to talking about some of the abuse from the creator on Nickelodeon. This is, I believe, at the point where iCarly, its run has ended, and Jennette is now on the spin-off show called Sam and Cat that she stars on with Ariana Grande, and something has just happened with the creator where he's gotten in trouble. So we're on page 214 and it says, "The creator has gotten in trouble from the network for accusations of his emotional abuse. I feel like it's been a long time coming and that it should have happened a lot sooner. I appreciate the amount of trouble he's gotten in. It wasn't just a slap on the wrist sort of thing. It's to the point where he's no longer allowed to be on set with any actors, which makes communication between takes complicated. The creator sits in a small cave-like room off to the side of the soundstage, surrounded by piles of cold cuts, his favorite snack, and Kids' Choice Award blimps, his most cherished life accomplishment. He watches our takes on 4 separate monitors, one for each camera, that are set up in his lair. Whenever he wants to give us a note, he tells it to an assistant director, who then has to run across the entire soundstage to give it to us. So our shoot days went from about 13 hours to about 17. The general on-set vibe these days can best be described as malaise meets dear God, please let's get this over with." That really speaks to the way that a lot of people in power get punished for the things they do wrong. I know that it wasn't until, I believe, 2018 that Nickelodeon officially cut ties with the creator, but at this point he's getting in trouble for being abusive to people on set. Instead of firing him, they basically punish everyone who works on set by having like, okay, we acknowledge that he can't be near any of the actors. We acknowledge that it's not safe for him to be near other people because he's such a terrible person, but we're not going to fire him. Instead, he's still going to direct the show. It's just going to take longer because the communication's going to take forever. So everyone gets punished. All the actors get punished. All the crew gets punished. The work days are so much longer. because they couldn't fire the person who's responsible for causing this in the first place. It really is a shame that someone who created so many of my favorite shows was such a terrible person. But then I think about it and I'm like, how many people are out there who have just as funny of ideas, who have just as great of concepts for TV shows, and just as good of comedic timing, and just as good of writing skills, and just as good of producing skills, that aren't terrible abusive people, that aren't being creepy with underage girls? How many more people are out there like that who don't get these opportunities to make their shows come to life? They should have fired him. They should have fired him earlier on, man. They should have. I think on page 220, Janette had a really strong comparison about how she doesn't want to be identified as just Sam from iCarly for the rest of her life, because throughout it, she talks about getting recognized in public a lot and people constantly seeing her and being like, oh, hey, it's Sam. And one of the things that I think was really tough, and she never drew this comparison directly, but at least it would have hurt me. I don't know if this hurt her, but it would have hurt me in this way, so that's something I picked. The character Sam on iCarly was constantly eating lots of junk food. That was one of her personality traits. She loved to eat fried chicken. She filled a sock with butter. She was all around junk food all the time. Meanwhile, as this book details, and I didn't read any of the details themselves because they're very disgusting, Janette's mom restricted her food so much, I don't think she would have been allowed to eat a fried chicken off of set. Her mom would get upset at her for eating a whole piece of fruit. If she got like a fruit basket as a gift for working on a show, her mom would be like, let's split this piece of fruit. Let's split one piece of melon together or something. So she was on such a restrictive diet, and even when she went out to lunch and dinner with executives, her mom was constantly telling her, you know, don't eat that much of that. There's too many calories in this. You can't eat for the rest of the day. So how restricted she was, and then she's being constantly compared to this character whose whole character is, I eat junk food all the time and it's quirky of me. Meanwhile, as an actress, she's not allowed to eat anything. At least that's one of the things that I picked up on. I don't know if she actually felt that way because she doesn't fully detail it, but it really felt that way. But all of that aside, she really did hate just being known as Sam constantly, because she wasn't that character. She was her own person, and she was trying to kind of get away from the spotlight, especially now after her mom's death. And she says, it doesn't help that I'm famous for a thing I started when I was a kid. I think of what it would be like if everyone was famous for a thing they did when they were 13. Their middle school band, their 7th grade science project, their 8th grade play. The middle school years are the years to stumble, fall, and tuck under the rug as soon as you're done with them because you've already outgrown them by the time you're 15. But not for me. I'm cemented in people's minds as the person I was when I was a kid. I'm aware enough to know how fucking annoying and whining this all sounds. Millions of people dream of becoming famous, and here I am with fame and hating it. I somehow feel entitled to my hatred since I was not the one who dreamed of being famous. Mom was. Mom pushed this on me. I'm allowed to hate someone else's dream, even if it's my reality. That is such a fantastic line to end a chapter on. It's Janette's birthday. She's at a bar or a club, I think, with some friends, and some friends bring out a cake for her to sing her happy birthday. For the first time, she doesn't know what to do, because if we remember, all the way back at the beginning of the book. Again, this is why I'm saying she's doing great with the setup and the payoff. She set up at the beginning of the book. It was like her 4th or 5th birthday. She knows what to wish for when she blows out the candle. She wishes that her mom will be alive for another year. Every year she has her birthday, she wishes her mom will be alive for another year because she's always scared of her mom dying. This is her first birthday after her mom's death. I didn't want to have to deal with my birthday wish. At 22, this is the first birthday wish I'll be making where I won't know what to wish for because the thing I've been wishing for all my life is done. Over. Case closed. The thing that I secretly hoped through all these years I had some control over, I know now that I don't and never did. My entire life's purpose, keeping mom alive and happy, was for nothing. All those years I spent focusing on her, all the time I spent orienting my every thought and action toward what I thought would please her most, were pointless, because now she's gone. So she blows out the candles just so people don't ask questions, and doesn't make any wish that year. That's another reason that I think the title is definitely earned and the title is hard-hitting. She was set up to do this whole thing, I will do anything to keep my mom alive, I'll do anything to keep my mom happy, and now that her mom's dead and she's deconstructed from it, she realizes she's actually happier. It's a full character arc wrapped up in this title, and I appreciate that. I want to talk about some of the ways this book talks about therapy and recovery as well, because I think it does a really good job with that. She talks about going to different therapists. She goes to an eating disorder specialist eventually because she's struggling with all of these things so much. But I thought that this scene on pages 244 to 245, where she's talking with her therapist named Laura and she's really struggling, I think this section's really impactful. A lot of times we hear stories from people who dealt with abuse in the past. You can look at their situation and say, this is a textbook case of abuse. It is very obvious from the outside that abuse and manipulation is what happened to this person, but they still haven't noticed it themselves, because when you're the one in that situation, we often justify it. We often think we couldn't get trapped in that situation. It couldn't happen to us. We often think that way about it. So when you're the one in that situation, it can be harder to identify. And seeing that play out in the scene with the therapist was really impactful. I want to understand more about little Janette, Laura says tenderly. I understand you felt a lot of pressure, that you had a lot of responsibility at an early age, but I want to get into some specifics. Always with the childhood, these therapists. I've seen enough movies and TV shows to know that this is the classic therapeutic scapegoat. Some shit happened in your childhood, it messed you up, that's why you are the way you are. But not me. I didn't have an alcoholic dad. My brothers didn't torture me when my parents weren't home. We were poor, sure, and lived in a hoarder house, yes, and mom had cancer when I was very little, which was very scary. But otherwise, things were fine. I relay this to Laura, gently suggesting in my tone that I refuse to play this game of boohoo, my childhood was woof. Tell me about your mom. Tell me about your relationship with her when you were a kid. Immediately, I'm defensive. Why does she want me to talk about mom? What's wrong with mom? Nothing's wrong with mom. Mom was perfect. I know in my gut I don't believe this, and that it's a lot more complicated than this, but why on earth would I tell Laura the specifics? I've never told anyone the specifics, and I never will. I don't even fully understand them, and I don't want to. I don't need to. Mom was wonderful. She was honestly like the perfect mom. Oh yeah? What was so perfect? I throw on my best fake smile. Laura's sharp. I'm sure she can see right through most of her clients, but not me. I didn't star on shitty sitcoms for a decade and not learn how to sell a line I don't believe in. I thought that writing was great right there, very full circle. Just everything, to be honest. She took care of me and my brothers. I'm sure that was really hard for her. That was her job. I feel interrogated, like I can't say the right thing. I speed up, trying to explain myself. Well, but I mean, this was different from most parents. Shit, I hated how that came out. How so? I pause to compose myself. Laura won't rattle me. I speak in an even, measured tone. She sacrificed everything for me. She constantly went without so she could take care of me. She put me first, ahead of herself. And do you think that's healthy? What kind of fresh hell is this? What is this impossible to ace quiz? I have no idea how I'm supposed to be answering to make mom look good. Well, I mean, I put her first too, so that kind of balanced it out. We balanced each other, putting each other first, out. I also think that it's interesting that we're seeing Janette still after her mom's death and still processing it, still being like, oh, I still need to make mom look good. I'm still doing things for her and for her sake. Then later Laura says, so when did you want to start acting? I know a trick question when I hear one. Actually, mom wanted me to start acting because she wanted me to have a better life than she had. Oh, so you didn't want to start acting? Your mom wanted you to start? Yes, I say with a little more heat on it than I would have liked, because she wanted me to have a better life than she had. It was very kind and generous of her. Okay, it was. I understand. Beat. Can you tell me the first time you were aware of your weight or your body in a, Laura pauses to find the right words, significant way? This one I don't want to answer, but I feel like if I wiggle around it, Laura will come right back for the jugular with her follow-up. I tread with caution. Well, when I was 11, I was concerned about getting boobs, so mom taught me about calorie restriction to help me out. To help you out? Yes. What do you mean to help you out? Well, I was concerned about getting boobs. Right, but how does your mom teaching you about calorie restriction help you out? Because watching my calories meant I could delay adulthood. Laura holds another one of her trademark unreadable stares at me. Even though I can't gauge the specifics, I can tell there's a lot of speculation going on. I feel the need to add more. Plus for acting, I always played characters younger than me, so if I wanted to keep booking, looking younger was important. By teaching me calorie restriction, she was helping to ensure my success. Janette, what you're describing is really unhealthy. Your mother essentially condoned your anorexia, encouraged it. She taught it to you. That's abuse. And so Janette starts to feel terrible here because I think that's the first time she's ever been told directly that her mom was abusive, and she had been kind of in denial about that and had been justifying it to herself. And that's when Janette gets up and she's like, I gotta go, I gotta get out of here, and she's ready to storm out. Tears fall down my cheeks while I drive home, trying desperately to process everything. Laura suggested that mom was abusive. My whole life, my entire existence has been oriented to the narrative that mom wants what's best for me. Mom does what's best for me. Mom knows what's best for me. So this whole idea is just absolutely shaking her entire perception of everything. Which is really scary. It's a lot to process when someone that to the end you believed loved you really was manipulating you in that way. Toward the end of the book, we once again get another nice full circle thing around the gift. So remember at the beginning of the book, her mom gave her this gift that she hated and she had to pretend that she loved it when in fact she didn't. And this time she's opening a gift that she just got from Miranda Cosgrove, who played Carly on iCarly. It was really nice reading throughout the book how she and Miranda were actually very good friends in real life, and they had a really strong friendship, and their bond on that show was very close. She seemed kind of like one of the few close friends that Janette really had, according to this book. She had a few other friends mentioned, but it seemed like a lot of things were just kind of dictated by her mom. But Miranda was always a good friend to her. So Miranda gives her a gift towards the end of the book. I love it, I say, and I'm not lying the way I did when I turned 6 and opened my Rugrats pajamas. I really do love it. I've had my backpack for 3 years and it's gotten pretty beat up looking. I've complained about it for months but haven't been able to find a decent replacement. But Miranda did. She found a beautiful black Toomey backpack with gold details. It's perfect. The only thing that beats Miranda's presents are her cards. I pull hers out to read it. Her handwriting is meticulous. Her phrases are kind and simple. She always squeezes in a couple well-placed jokes, and she always signs her cards to me as Alec Baldwin. I don't even remember where this joke came from anymore, but it still makes me laugh every time. And later, Janette talks about how she chooses not to do the iCarly reboot when it comes out, and how Miranda from the start is incredibly supportive of her for that. Even though the creator is not involved in this show, Janette at this point wanted to be done with acting for good. Regarding kind of ending her time with Nickelodeon and then with acting as a whole, there's a whole scene on pages 216 and 217 that I think is really interesting, where a lot of people on Twitter and people discussing this book have been pointing out how she was offered the hush money. So that is true, it seems. Here's what it said. Her show is getting canceled when Sam and Cat, I believe, is coming to an end, and she's excited about it. She's kind of ready to be done with all of this. Wait, they're canceling the show, I say, unable to hide my glee. Yep, we knew you'd be excited, Agent 1 says. Best part is, Agent 2 starts in, pausing for dramatic effect. I swear agents are the best performers. They're offering you $300,000. I pause. This doesn't sound right to me. Why? Manager 2 chimes in. Well, think of it as like a thank you gift, he blurts out in one mushed together phrase. A thank you gift? I'm suspicious. Yeah, a thank you gift, Manager 1 repeats. They're giving you $300,000, and the only thing they want you to do is never talk publicly about your experience at Nickelodeon, specifically related to the creator. No, I say immediately and instinctively. I love that she says no. They're trying to frame it as like, oh, this money's like a gift. You just can never talk about what you went through. Dude, I bet she made way more than $300,000 on this book. The book ends with another really full circle moment where she goes to visit her mom's grave. And she says, I look at mom's headstone. There are about 20 adjectives on it because everyone in the family had adjective pitches and nobody was willing to forsake theirs. We gotta include playful, Grandpa insisted. Why does nobody like brave? Brave is a good word, Grandma wailed. So we just crammed all the words on there. Even mom's place of death is cluttered. That kind of referencing back to all the hoarder stuff that she put her through. I know that I've been talking about this book for a really long time, but honestly, there's even so much more in this book. There's a lot more scenes, like even though I did read some very graphic scenes, there are some scenes of SA type stuff she goes through with men later that are very graphic and disgusting. And there's also a lot more very detailed descriptions of her recovery, specifically surrounding ED, and graphic descriptions of developing bulimia and what that was like as well. So just be warned if you read this book, there are a lot of really heavy topics discussed with a lot of very open honesty, but I think that's one of the things that makes it so wonderful. If you're in a place mentally where you think you can process this book, I absolutely recommend it. I think it not only like from my literary perspective, from my perspective as a writer and editor, I found it to be one of the best written celebrity memoirs that I've ever read, and I thought that so much of it hit really hard. I was glad to see Janette talking about her love of writing in this book, because her love of writing definitely shines through in this book. You can tell that she wrote this with passion for telling a good story and for putting words together in a way that was going to suck the reader into the story and have that impact. Honestly, I can't recommend this book enough. Please, if you want to read it, I highly recommend buying it, read it, support her, make sure she makes more than $300,000 so that it's a good thing she turned down the hush money from Nickelodeon. I'm really grateful that she's able to now tell her own story, and I really appreciate you guys sticking around to watch this review with me. If you read this book, let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below as well. It definitely gave me a different perspective on Nickelodeon for sure. I mean, I always knew the creator was quite a shady character and that he had a lot of speculation about being weird with his actors and specifically the underage girls and things like that, so I was always suspicious of him, but she confirmed and even elaborated on a lot of the ways that he was really, really terrible. I don't know what the solution is to a lot of these issues other than having more regulations surrounding child actors, because you see so often kids who go into the entertainment industry, whether it's because they're pressured by their parents or because they genuinely want it, but at that age you don't really have enough of a perspective on the world to really give true informed consent on these things. And we see a a lot of people dealing with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, all kinds of difficulties later in life due to the pressure they experienced then and the abuse. It seems like a lot of times, specifically in Hollywood and in the entertainment industry, a lot of really abusive people go into these jobs and end up working with people, and a lot of people end up being abused, whether kids or adults, but even especially kids. So I hope that this book does also spark some discussion about ways to make improvements to the entertainment industry so that this kind of thing doesn't keep happening. But I'd love to know all your thoughts in the comments below. I will see you guys again on Monday. In the meantime, support authors, y'all. Support authors. This is a great first book to have out there. I hope she continues writing more. Definitely check this book out. Have a fantastic start to your weekend. Bye!
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago. You guys asked for it.